afternoon or good evening, depending on whether you're or what time of day you're listening to this recording. I hope you're all safe and well, and welcome to your video PowerPoint lesson on morals and crime. I hope you got on okay with the last lesson's activities. There were two, one of which we'll be using today. So the first one was to make sure you were fully understanding the concepts of absolute and relative morality, and the second one was an exploration of crime and punishment, and you needed to find a newspaper article. If you haven't done that, you do need to do it, so go away, go do that first and then come back when you've done it. Alright, but if you're ready to go, here we are. So have a look at these two statements here just to recap where we are. So we've got ending a human life is always wrong, and ending a human life under some circumstances, for example abortion after a rape, is okay. What do you think? Well, which one is absolute? Hopefully you know that really well now, and that would be the first one. And which one is relative? That would be the second statement. Which one do you mostly agree with? Well, today we're looking at morals and crime, and we'll be linking those ideas back with this in next week's lesson, actually, when we look at types of punishment. But today, here's your date, title and learning challenge. You're going to be hopefully being able to show you understand the difference between a sin and a crime. And if you are level 7 to 9, hopefully you'll be able to include some Muslim ideas in your work as well. For this lesson you will need the textbook and the two printouts from the BLE frog page, or from the page you got the video from. So we'll crack on. So sin versus crime. So sin and crime are the two main words we're going to be paying attention to today, and wrath and sloth. Now, I'm not going to tell you the definitions because those will become apparent during the lesson. Looking at the scheme here, the specification, as you can see, we've done the top parts, we've done this bit here, and now we're on this section here. Beliefs and attitudes about the causes of crime, and then next lesson we're going to do the aims of punishment. So I've split this lesson into two. Alright, so I asked you to research a case of a criminal and their punishment last lesson, and to make this easy to go through I picked myself one as well. Mine was from The Independent, and the tagline was "Man jailed for claiming he had coronavirus and spitting on a police officer." So have a look at yours, and we're going to just go through it to get us into the mood, I suppose, of thinking about crime and criminals. So let's have a little look then. Well, this is what you need to look at on your as you go through. Well, what did they do? Why did they do it? And what was their punishment? So have a look at yours. I'll tell you about mine. First of all, the man falsely claimed to have OD'd. He then spat on a policeman and peed in the police van. Okay, why did they do it? Well, he'd just been arrested for an ongoing investigation for criminal damage, and the punishment was £250 compensation to the policeman and 12 weeks in jail. Hopefully, as you're going through yours, you'll already be asking the question and thinking about, was this an appropriate punishment? Did he have good cause to do what he did? Let's have a little look. So moving along then, the cause of this guy's criminal behaviour was that he was angry because he was arrested for criminal damage. Okay, does that give an excuse for his behaviour? He lied about having taken an overdose of drugs, so they had to go to the hospital. He then spat on the police officer and said he had coronavirus and peed in the police van. Can we honestly say that being arrested was a valid reason for that kind of behaviour? I don't think so, personally. How did their actions affect others? Well, this had quite a big impact really, because the policeman had to then self-isolate for 7 days. So that meant that we have one less police officer, and as you are aware in the news, this has been going on a lot. I'd be interested to know if any of you also picked a similar scenario. Do feel free to email me and tell me what yours was. Also, it was a waste of NHS time, because doctors and nurses had to check him over because he said he'd taken an overdose, which wasn't true. So we wasted police and NHS time. And the punishment then, personally, he got 12 months, not 12 months, 12 weeks in prison and a 250 quid fine. I think personally it was appropriate, but I don't think it was enough, to be fair. I think he ought to have got longer jail time under the circumstances. And I'm thinking back to year 9 about the aims of punishment. The purpose of his punishment, to be jailed for 12 weeks, is likely to protect society, because, you know, running around doing things like that is going to put people at unease, and again causes time wasting. And I think also they might put him in for 12 months in the hopes that he would change his ways, so reform. Personally, yeah, I think he would commit a crime again. I don't think that necessarily he'd commit the same crime again, but I do think he'd commit a crime again. So go through the same kind of discussion with your own scenario. You don't have to write any of this down. It's just to get you into the right thoughts about the topic. What I'm going to show you now is a video, and the video is discussing what is the worst crime. So just in your head, have a little think for yourself. What do you think is the worst crime? And as we watch the video, I'd like you to create a spidergram or a bullet point list, or however you want to have a record of this. I'd like you to write down some of the key words that are linked to crime and punishment. You could do it as a spidergram or a list, as I said. So here we go. What is the worst crime?
Taking up a person's life, there's no justification for that.
I think probably the worst possible crime you could commit would either be paedophilia or murder.
I think the worst crime is murder.
It has to be murder.
Rape, paedophilia, and then definitely murder.
When someone's murdered, it hurts their family and hurts society in general, because it puts fear into people.
Rape is obviously a serious crime, but it can be overcome by the victim. Murder obviously can't.
Rape is a bad thing, I mean, because a person's obviously scarred for life, and it's like a life sentence with them.
If you get raped, then you have to suffer the consequences for the rest of your life, but if you get killed, then you have no life, so you can't suffer anything. It depends whether losing your life is worse than the suffering.
I think a rapist should be locked up, confined.
If it's a younger person, under 18, under 16, I mean, life, the 25 years is probably satisfactory, because at that age people are probably able to reform. It boils down to the crime the person's committed.
Many people don't rehabilitate, and they have to have psychiatric help rather than rehabilitate in the community, which seems to be very popular these days. People tend to just commit the crime they've already committed.
I think the punishment for paedophilia should be to put them in prison, so they're not a danger to anyone outside of prison. You know, if it's really, really severe, I think they should definitely bring back the death penalty.
I don't believe in the death sentence, but I do believe that life should be life.
I think the sentence for murder and for rape should be life imprisonment, or if you can be absolutely certain, and the other problem is I don't know whether you can, the death sentence should be brought back.
You'd have to take into account specific circumstances as to whether they were provoked or whatnot. Petty crimes with young offenders who are under a certain age. I mean, stuff like rehabilitation groups, youth clubs and stuff like that can advise them and point them in the right direction before their petty stuff comes to a bigger crime in the future, which is usually a trend.
Fraud, I don't think necessarily should carry a custodial sentence.
They should be limited after they come out of prison as to what jobs they can do, access to money, finances, running a business.
Fines should be like bespoke to who you've been fined, and they should find like a relative kind of punishment to their background and their affluence and income and all that.
Any theft against individuals should carry a custodial sentence. If it's fraud against individuals, then I think it should.
A prison sentence will be a bit too extreme for somebody who's been graffitiing on the street, but there could be some sort of like community service that person can do, whereas they do go around to clean up their mess they've made.
So what do you think of that then? I really, really don't like that middle class man. What's he said? He said rape can be overcome by the victim, but murder can't. I get what he's saying, but he just wound me up, because then he went on to say that people who commit fraud shouldn't be locked up. And then he said, oh, but if you commit fraud against an individual, then you should get locked up for that. So that implies that if you commit fraud against a company, then you shouldn't have to go to prison for that. I just think that's a little bit of a double standard, personally. I didn't like what he had to say at all. So let's have a little look at crime in a little bit more detail. So first of all, what is crime? So firstly, crime is an unlawful act which is punishable by the state. So I would like you to write that one down. I'm just going to read you a little bit of information from the textbook. This is on page 87. So you do have the online textbook link, so you will need that later. So let's have a little look. What is a crime? Crime can be defined as any offence that is punishable by law. The government makes laws which govern our behaviour. The police force present and detects crime, and the principal job of the criminal justice system is to enforce these laws and punish crime. Through the course of history, what constitutes crime and ideas ideas about the causes of crime and how criminals should be punished have changed. I'm going to play you a little video just now, and the video is quite amusing in some ways. Talks you through punishment and crime through the ages. Clearly, what constitutes crime today is different to what constituted crime back in the Middle Ages. If you wanted something extra to do, that's a real fun research task to have a look at. So have a look at this video and see what you think.
I sentence you to death by exposure in animal skin. You will be sewn into the carcass of a dead donkey, tied to a rock on the top of a hill, and become dinner for the vultures. Now, take him away.
No ASBOs or electronic house arrest in the good old days. In fact, before the Middle Ages, punishment was usually left to victims or their families. Punishment was not handed out in proportion to the crime. An eye for an eye could become 2 eyes, a nose, and some body parts. This often involved corporal punishment, such as flagellation, stick beatings, and whipping.
Ow!
In the Roman Empire, the maximum penalty was 39 lashes. The most notorious recipients were the English Queen Boudica and, of course, Jesus Christ. Capital punishment was the highlight of public entertainment in the Middle Ages and beyond. A felon was often hanged, disemboweled, burned and quartered, or boiled and decapitated, whatever was the flavour of the month. The crowds ate it up. Of course, female convicts' dignity was preserved by only burning them at the stake. By the early 19th century, things had gotten a bit out of hand. No less than 220 crimes were punishable by death. This included such transgressions as
Being in the company of a gypsy for a month, strong evidence of malice in a child aged 7 to 14 of age, and blackening the face or using a disguise whilst committing a crime.
a quarter of these offences were for various acts of theft and poaching, in other words, crimes against the upper classes. Until recently, punishment was all about revenge and deterring others from committing crimes, but that's changed a bit. These days, crime is also seen as a symptom of a sick society, or even an individual's disease. Corporal punishment has all but disappeared, except as a way to discipline children at home, and even then it is only allowed under strict guidelines.
On the 13th of August 1964, Peter Allen and Gwyn Evans were the last people to be executed in the UK, but the practice still goes on in 55 countries, including China, Iran and the United States.
Where are we today? Only the state, represented by judges, has the right to impose prison sentences, give people house arrest, take their possessions, impose community service, tag them electronically, or use any number of measures. In Britain, about 1 in 1,000 people are in prison, and In the US, it is 10 times as high. However, some people still think they should take the law into their own hands. For example, in August 2007, unionist groups in Northern Ireland were linked to the tarring and feathering of a suspected drugs dealer.
An eye for an eye, and the whole world goes blind.
Okay, so there you go. You could be seriously punished for being in the company of a gypsy for a week. Wow. So have a look at these statistics here. These are in the textbook on page 80. No, they're not. They're not in the textbook on page 87. There are some similar in the textbook on page 87. It is thought that in Britain today there are over 30,000 crimes, and these range from crimes against poverty and internet crime and fraud. We don't really have an up-to-date view of crime ever, because many crimes are not actually reported to the police. So these statistics and the ones in the book are based on the evidence that they have about crime. Now I want to move on so you can understand the difference between what is a crime and what is a sin. So this is the definition of a sin, which you need to have down. It is an immoral act considered to be a transgression against divine law. So divine law is basically, divine means from God, so any law that is from God, and transgress means to go against. So an immoral act considered to be a going against the teachings of God is what it means. Let's have a look at this. So in a nutshell, crime is breaking the law of the land, the government, and sin is breaking the law of God. And something to consider is, are crimes always sins, and are sins always crimes? Well, not really. So let me find. So I'm going to read a little bit from the book again for you on page 87. Although there are many sins that can be punished by law, a great many sins are not considered crimes in modern society. For example, while it goes against the 10 Commandments to commit adultery and to work on a Sunday or Saturday, neither of those are crimes according to the law. Okay? So as you can see, sins aren't always crimes and crimes aren't always sins. So you've got a little task to do now. Okay, so you've got a sheet that was a downloadable sheet that needs trimming and sticking in your books or keeping wherever you're keeping your stuff. And what you've got to do is put these words here into the correct boxes here. So I'll do a couple with you, and then you can put me on pause and come back to me when you're done. So for example, disrespecting parents comes from the 10 Commandments, to honour your father and your mother. It is not a crime to be disrespectful to your parents, although your parents might disagree. It goes down as a sin. Okay. Let's find another one. Theft. Is theft a sin? 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not steal. It is definitely a sin. Theft. Is it a crime? Yes, it's a crime. It goes against the law to steal something that doesn't belong to you. Now, if you're stuck or can't remember, have a look at the criteria at the bottom of your sheet there, and it will remind you. And so theft, therefore, goes into the both column. Alright, so I'll leave you to get along with those, see how you get on, and then come back. Okay, welcome back. I'm going to read out on page 87 these words to you. These are examples of sins: pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. Are any of those crimes? Actually, no, none of them are crimes. However, in my personal opinion, I think they can lead to crimes, which we'll go through after you've done your 7 deadly sins task. So let's have a look at these 7 deadly sins. Don't do these activities yet. What you need to get hold of is this, this sheet here, your 7 deadly 7 deadly sins sheet. Now don't fill this out while you're watching the video. To be honest, you probably will need to Google the 7 deadly sins to get yourself a definition for each. So we're going to watch a video. It is very, very cheesy. So let's have a little look to give you an overview of the 7 deadly sins.
It was said by them of old, avoid all sin, but avoid most especially the 7 deadly sins. Pride. Beware of pride, for pride puffeth up the great, and causeth the mighty to fall. Beware of envy, for envy robbeth of joy, and leadeth to the path of bitterness. But above all things, beware of sloth, for it is adorable. Avoid wrath, the spark that leadeth to deadly fire. And gluttony, the drunkenness of excess. And also sloth, the cutest of all the creatures, which feeds upon twigs, leaves, and the hearts of men. Greed doth beguile the mighty of spirit, but who cares because sloth, it sucks thy soul to the abyss of cuteness. Lust, it doth tempt the hearts of, okay, seriously, it's so precious, I mean, look out. Beware the 7 deadly sins, especially sloth, the most adorable sin. Oh my goodness, that sloth gets me every time. You are too much, sloth. Ah, you're killing me with your cute little blinks, and you even blink slow. Oh, yeah, you should probably subscribe.
Yeah, we didn't really need that one, but it's one of my favourites. So what I'd like you to do is on your 7 deadly sins sheet, you need to fill out this section here, which is very simple really. Look at the definitions online. And then if you are 7 to 9, you should do this, but of course you can do it if you're not 7 to 9. A virtue. So it's the 7 deadly sins, or these sins are sometimes called vices. So things that are a negative. A virtue is something good that will help you overcome that vice. So put me on pause, off you go, onto the internet, do a Google search and fill out your grid and come back when you've done it. And welcome back. So having a look then, is jail a reasonable punishment for acting out any of the 7 deadly sins? Probably not. However, could these vices lead to things that are punishable? Let's have a look. Here are your answers to have a look at. So these are, short form, so you've probably hopefully written a little bit more in your definition than I've got on here. So for example, if you look at this one, greed, excessive desire for material things, clearly greed could lead to a crime, and the crime would be theft, and that would, so there's a link there between sin and crime. And to overcome greed, be generous. So these second lines here are the words that kind of like counteract the vice. The idea is that if you are diligent, that will mean that you will avoid sloth, which is laziness or lack of effort. Okay, if you are moderate, exercise regularly and avoid excesses in eating and drinking, then that is the way you behave. Virtue is positive behaviours. If you behave that way, you will avoid the sin of gluttony. So you can see how they're all linked together. Okay. And just for fun, I found this when I was researching this last year actually. This column here, these are a list of demons, and it's interesting because you know, sometimes we use these words Beelzebub, Satan, Lucifer and interchange them, but these are the names given to 7 demons, and these demons have these vices linked to them. So for example, Lucifer, God's chosen angel who fell from heaven, it was because he was full of pride, because he was not happy that the humans had had God's favour above the angels, and he wasn't happy with that. And so the sin of pride is linked to Lucifer. To counteract pride, you should be humble. Okay, so you don't need to know that. That was just for a little bit of fun. And this I don't really need to go through because you've probably used that in order to fill out your previous grid. Now, if you've completed the grid earlier with the crimes and sins and were struggling where to put anything, and you want to send it to me, that's absolutely fine. You can just screenshot it and send it to me, or email it to me. In fact, you can email me for anything. It's spa@srpa.co.uk, and I will answer all your questions, mark any work that you do if you want a bit of feedback to know that you're doing okay. All right. So crime versus sin. Now you've got a little bit of a task to do, so you're going to have to go away again. You need page 87 in the textbook. You need to read the tiny section which is crime versus sin and have your own notes. So what are the consequences for sin in Christianity? And please, if you are 7 to 9, include in that what are the consequences of sin in Islam. And you can come back when you've done. We're nearly finished. And welcome back. In a nutshell, the consequences of sin are for Christians are basically the knowledge that you have offended God. In some cases you can be cut off from the church. So for example, committing adultery in the Roman Catholic Church would mean you'd be excommunicated. You wouldn't be allowed to take part in church services such as communion and things like that. And some Christians might go as far to say that there are some sins if you commit that you can't go to heaven. And then for Muslims, they have a Sharia law code, and Muslims who openly go against the accepted code could receive certain punishments as laid out in Sharia law. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is watch another video. I think, yeah, this is the last video, there's only 2 slides left. And I'd like you to make, while you're watching this, a spidergram as to what causes people to commit crimes. Why do people commit crimes? Okay?
A murderer might look like anybody else, and any other type of offender might look like anybody else. In fact, there are some personality differences that make you much more likely to commit crimes. So you've got the kind of the people that the Daily Mail would call the sickos. So those are people that are really very different from the rest of us, and there's something really very wrong with them. It means that they are a risk, and they'll always be a risk. And you've got the rest of us. In my opinion, all of us could kill somebody under the right, or rather the wrong set of circumstances if we were pushed. If I was faced with somebody who had a knife at my son's throat and I had a way of stopping them, and that the only way to stop them was to kill them, I'd kill them. So you've also got other people who are kind of like the rest of us, but perhaps slightly more vulnerable. So in other words, there's perhaps a slightly wider range of circumstances in which they might kill. We can say working class people are more likely to commit offences than middle class people. That's not because being working class makes you a criminal, but it's what your parents did, it's what kind of housing you live in, it's what education you've had, it's your job, it's your income. Afro-Caribbean people are more likely to commit offences than white people, who are more likely to commit offences than Indian people. On the face of it, that can be used by racists to say, oh, well, black people are all criminals. But again, that's all to do with socioeconomic status. If you're a black person and you came over in the 50s or 60s into this country, you were treated abhorrently, and people, as a result, ever since have kind of underperformed. Teenage boys are more likely to offend, certainly in ways that are likely to end up with them getting arrested than our teenage girls. Basically, most crimes are committed by young people. And the older you get, the less crime you commit. So you don't see many 70-year-olds, for example, going around burgling houses. There are some crimes where children are less likely to commit. So children are less likely to commit murder, for example. But that's often because of the fact that they're less likely to be in domestic situations where most murders are committed. There were people that I came across who had really appalling upbringings, that it's kind of hard to even conceive of how anybody could actually survive that kind of upbringing. And you kind of look at that and think, well, that's not surprising that they ended up in trouble with the law. But then what is interesting is other people who had similar upbringings who don't go on to become offenders. Why do they not become offenders? Well, I guess it will be partly to do with their genes, their personality, their DNA, that somehow allows them to cope with stuff that other people can't cope with. A big proportion of your personality is determined by your genes, and a big part of it is determined by what happens to you as you grow up. So, as with any of these things, it's never simple. You can't say it's all your genes, you can't say it's all your upbringing. It's a combination of the two. Exactly how much of one or the other is open to question.
Right, so I'm going to give you a choice of two activities here. So you could do this task, which is quite hard actually. There's no sheet for this, so you're going to have to copy it, make your own circle and your own grid. So these here are some of the things that the gentleman in the video brought up as being causes of crime. And if you go to page 88 in the textbook, you'll find them there as well. Now you might struggle with this, so if you're going to struggle with this, it's a real thought task. You might want to rank them first in number order, from one being the biggest cause to the least cause, and then from that create your pie chart and answer the 3 questions underneath. I must admit, I was looking at the questions earlier and I'm thinking, oh, I thought that, and then I changed my mind. So it's quite a tricky one, but it's quite a nice one to do, to create a little chart and everything and colour code it. So that's the first task. That's hard. Okay, so more suited to 7 to 9, but open to anyone. Your alternate task is this one here. So read page 88, the causes of crime, and then write a paragraph identifying the main causes of crime. I'd like you to give examples of 3 of the causes of crime and why you think they lead to crimes. So that's the easier task. You can do either or both. It's up to you. That's fine. And again, that's the last slide. So if you are struggling in any way or need a little bit of extra direction, or you can't download a sheet or whatever, you just email me at spa@srpa.co.uk, and I'm here to help you most times of the day and night. All right, so I will be, there's another task after this, so the next lesson, right, let me explain. I think I've put 3 lessons down for this week, and I think you've only got 2. So if that's the case, just carry the 1 over, because I'll do 2 next week. So you just carry it over. So you get 5 a fortnight. I'm setting 5 a fortnight. I'm probably doing them all the wrong way round. So the next lesson you've got is using the booklet. And it's basically read the information and answer the questions. All right. And then next week you will have a video lesson on the aims of punishment and another lesson. All right. So contact me if you need to. Stay safe. Behave for your parents, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye for now.